Hi, welcome back. In the last video, we talked about how PED would have been useful in analyzing the effect of a supply shift. In today's video, we're going to talk about whether PES had a role to play also when analyzing the effect of a supply shift. Now, for simplicity, right, let us assume that there is a shift in the supply to the left due to a decrease in the number of sellers. So this supply shift, you can see shown on the diagram, right, will have caused a shortage of Q0 prime Q0. Right? And this shortage would exert an upward pressure on the price, and the eventual market price would increase. Now, in order to show that the PES method, right, I'm going to now draw in a second set of supply curves that are in blue. The difference between this set of supply curve and the original set of supply curves is they're steeper, right? So I use blue color to indicate this price inelastic supply. Now notice how I've isolated the horizontal distance of the shift to be the same, because I wanted to keep the horizontal change constant, because this is a decrease in number of sellers, so the number of units available at each price level should be the same, right? So there should be a leftward shift of equal magnitude. Now you can see from the diagram immediately, right, the shortage is the same in both cases. Both cases would have driven up the prices, but the price increase, right, would have been a lot smaller for the original black color set of supply curves compared to the blue color set of supply curves. So the magnitude of the price increase becomes much more significant for the price inelastic supply. Now, but wait a minute, look at the horizontal axis outcome as well. The quantities, right, are decreasing also by a larger extent. So therefore, right, in trying to conclude whether total expenditure had increased or decreased or not, right, the use of PES isn't really that helpful. Does PES matter though? Yes, PES does matter in talking about the magnitude of increase in price as well as the magnitude of decrease in quantity sold, right? So both P and Q changes are larger for the more price inelastic supply, as you can see from the diagram for the blue color graphs, and smaller for both P and Q effects, right, for the black color set of supply curves, which are the more price elastic. But we still have no additional information as to whether the P would have risen more or less than proportionally to the fall in Q. So conclusions about total expenditure, PES doesn't seem to be that helpful, right? But PES does matter to some degree, right? So now, however, the problem is a little bit more complex than this. Now look at the next diagram. If we change the original event, right, instead of a decrease in number of sellers to, let's say, an increase in unit cost of production, maybe cost of factor inputs had increased, then this time the supply curve isn't so much as shifting to the left, but rather shifting upwards by a vertical distance equal to the cost per unit. Or it could have been a tax, right? It could have been an indirect specific tax that increased the cost per unit by a certain number of dollars, and this would cause the upward shift. Now, if you look at the two supply curves again, right, two set of supply curve, the blue set that is more price inelastic and the black set that is more price elastic. This time we isolate the vertical distance to be the same for both sets of supply curve. Now then you can see now the conclusion as we get from before. The changes in price and quantity are now smaller for the blue set of supply curves and greater for the black set of supply curves. Now you get quite the opposite conclusion as before. So ultimately, right, what conclusions can we draw from here? Does PES matter when analyzing supply curve shift? Yes, right, PES does matter, but not quite as helpful when trying to conclude about whether total expenditure will rise or fall. So do we use this in the exam? Often we don't. So then the final question becomes, when do we use this? Well, there is one special situation we might use PES, and that is when analyzing, right, the shared burden, right, of an increase in cost of production. Suppose there's an increase in cost of production in a market. Firms facing higher costs will try to pass on the higher cost to the consumers. To what extent are firms able to pass on the higher cost to consumers in terms of higher prices will depend on both PED as well as PES, and more specifically, the relative magnitude of those two values, which is something we'll talk about in another video. All right, thank you.